Good evening and welcome, everybody. I am delighted that we are here this evening. We haven't been here for a while. We haven't had a talk, so I'm excited to introduce Margarita Celeste, who is a practicing traditional astrologer who graduated from the celebrated astrologer Rod Susskind School of Astrology, has been passionate about astrology from a very early age, influenced by Linda Goodman. I remember the Linda Goodman book with the big moon on I think on one of my sister's bookshelves. And she also had an uncle who initially taught her astrology. Margarita's been with the school for a long time, kind of facilitating and supporting us through the stars and the moons. And really tonight, just to talk to us about what is going to happen between now and the end of the year, because I don't know where the last 8 months have gone, because I think when we booked this, it was talked about this, it was 6 months, and now we even further into the year. So is it going to be the rough ride we've had between January and now? Are things going to feel better? And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about the smooth ride moving forward towards the end of the year. And Marguerite, over to you. Just a couple of housekeeping things, guys. If you have a burning question, please pop it in the Q&A. If it's appropriate, we'll take it during the talk, or we might leave it for later. So don't wait until the end and then we're completely off that subject. The other thing is pop in the chat where you're from, keep the conversations going, encourage our speaker. But it's wonderful to be here tonight. As I say, we haven't actually done this for some time, and I'm just glad to be here and sharing some wisdom and knowledge with all of you. But more importantly, what the hell's going to happen in the next few months? Over to you.
Thanks, Cindy. I always love your introductions. They're always so warm and they really open the floor for the vibe for tonight. So thank you so much for that. It has been a while since we've had a little talk. So I'm very honored to be able to do this. And just having a quick squiz at all the names of the attendees. It's nice to see some really familiar names, not your faces, but yeah. So thanks, guys, for coming along. It's nice to see you again. Some of you I haven't seen since the last couple of courses. So yeah, you're the ones that know a little bit more about astrology, so please feel free to pop lots of questions in the chat box. We really want to make this as interactive as possible, and you guys know from some of you who have done my courses, I do like to have these kind of like, especially when it's online, it's so important to have these engaging discussions rather than me just blabbing on for an hour. So yeah, please do pop those questions in. Hey Mary. Hey, Marianne. Oh, Sedgefield. Cool. St. James. Yeah, so Cindy's quite right. I mean, where the title of this talk is Where Has 2023 Gone? I was trying to think of a title. I was like, actually, that's the only real question on my mind right now is where has 2023 gone? It's August already. Hey, we've got someone from Spain, Zambia. That's amazing. And then I was just kind of reflecting on this time last year. So August of 2022, I mean, just judging from the readings I was doing at that time and the clients I was seeing around that time, last year, August 2022 was quite a doozy. It was the start of a very, very wild cosmic ride. So what was kind of happening around August of last year is that we had the beginning of a Mars retrograde phase, which only happens every 2 years. And this particular Mars retrograde was pretty brutal. It lasted for a good 8 months. People only really started emerging out of the chaos that was in about February of this year. And then, of course, we've had like this roller coaster until August now. So I think it's always good with astrology. We always, studying the past, the present, and the future. To get hindsight, to get an idea of what's to come, to kind of what do we need to do in the present in order to mitigate things or to understand things, to make different choices in the future. So yes, and such appropriate timing. We've got Happy Lions Day today. So it's all, very special timing in terms of this particular date, the 8th of the 8th. So yeah, well done for everybody for coming, and thanks for being here. For those of you who don't know me, like Cindy said, I'm a practicing traditional astrologer. Graduated from Mount Suskin. I've got a lovely, thriving practice. I do a lot of web content, app content, horoscope writing, consultations, courses, that type of thing. So I live, eat, and sleep astrology. It's what I do every single day of my life. So what I find pretty interesting, aside from the fact that the timing of this is the Lion's Gate, I don't know if anybody, you can just also pop this in the chat box. Does anybody here know that we are in a retrograde, an important retrograde phase of the moment? And anyone want to tell me which retrograde? There we go. Sinead's got it. Venus. Okay. Venus. Yeah, so our timing is very interesting. Cindy's a scary one. Yeah, so we're smack bang in the middle of Venus retrograde at the moment, which is also a pretty rare retrograde. I mean, relatively speaking, it only happens every 18 months. And so it is actually quite important, because Venus is one of those planets that is pretty personal to all of us. So let's kind of backtrack a few steps. Firstly, what is retrograde? And secondly, what is Venus? For those of you who don't know, yeah, Sinead's quite right, many breakups. But essentially, we have 10 planets in our system that we work with, and each of those 10 planets has something that they symbolically represent, that they talk about, right? So, for example, we have our sun, which is our essential personality or a sense of identity, otherwise known as our star signs. That's what Linda Goodman wrote about. We have planets like Mercury, which is how we communicate and how we think and our sort of mental processing style. We have our moon, which is all about our emotional style. So we also have Venus, which is essentially our relationships planet. Okay, so she represents this concept of relating and connecting to others. And it's not just romantic relationships. She represents friendships, business partnerships, any kind of relationship that we have falls under the banner of Venus. So every 18 months, she does go retrograde. So what does retrograde mean? For those of you who don't know, planets have a very particular speed that they move. And when they go retrograde, they appear to slow down in their orbit and go backwards. Well, they do slow down in their orbit and they appear to go backwards. So as I always say to my students, it's when you are driving a car at a certain speed and then there's another car next to you which is driving slower. And if you look at the car next to you that's driving slow, it looks like it's actually going backwards. It's an optical illusion. So that's essentially what a retrograde planet does. Anybody know the kind of concept behind retrograde? Like, anybody heard of Mercury retrograde? What actually happens when a planet goes retrograde, symbolically speaking? Anybody want to pop that in the chat box? Anybody know? Want to take a stab? I like to do this teach test thing, as you guys, some of you may know. Disruption. Adele's quite right. It's very disruptive. Yes. Retrograde. Caitlin says review, realignments. I love that. Yes, I love the words. Challenging aspects of the planet are emphasized. Berenice, perfect. So Berenice has done at least 4 courses with me. Disruption and bad things happen, Cynthia. Okay. Bria, the usual support you would get in that area from that planet falls away. That's a very nice way to put it. Okay, so there's some people here with some good, really good answers. Thanks, guys. So yeah, look, we try, astrologers, we love to be dramatic. We can be drama queens. So we have to tone that down a little bit, because otherwise we run around predicting doomsday. And it's not doomsday. This is not the end of the world, but it is disruptive and it is challenging. And Caitlin's put it really nicely. So we tend to need to rest, move inwards rather than outwards. Maria says we have to slow down and think again. Very nice. And someone was saying the words. Yeah, Caitlin, review, realignment. So when planets go retrograde, we tend to think, oh, well, the gods are out to get us, and we're being punished for our sins. But it's really not the case. It's more of a case of astrology is a very cyclical symbology, and we are cyclical beings. I mean, we have cyclical seasons, we have birth, we have life, we have death. Everything is cyclical. And so we as a society have kind of gotten into this habit of being very linear. So we're very bent on progress and keep on moving forward and goal orientation and, you know, all this kind of linear progress, but it's impossible to keep at that pace. So when planets go retrograde, remember we have this thing with astrology as above, so below. So when planets go retrograde, it's an invitation from the cosmos to slow down, to review, to renew, and to take responsibility. And there's lots of rewords. And I always have all of them before the webinar, and then I forget all of them as soon as I start the lesson. I don't know why that happens to me. So Karen's quite right. We do self-reflection and go into the past. So we've got to take whatever that planet is and whatever it represents, and you've got to say, this is the thing that is slowing down and looking like it's becoming disruptive and problematic. So Venus is relationships, not only relationships, but she's finances, and she's our values as well. She's what gives us pleasure and enjoyment. So all of these concepts can become slightly problematic because they're not moving forward in the way that we're used to, right? We're used to having our foot on the accelerator and things are supposed to be moving forward, and yet they seem to be moving backward, or there is some sort of delay in the progress, or there are problems, or there are hitches, right? So Venus retrograde is the perfect time to be reflecting on our personal relationships, right? To be really rethinking our relationships, to be thinking if our values are being fulfilled in our relationships, if our values are being fulfilled anywhere, even with outside of a relationship. So it's a time to really review our values, what's important to us. And then by the time Venus goes out of retrograde, which will be around the 4th of September, we'll be able to, armed with this information, we'll be able to move forward in a much more aware and conscious way when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to our values, and even when it comes to our finances. So a lot of the time people are also like, especially those who have heard of Mercury retrograde, which is the communication planet, they don't want to make any decisions. They're like, well, I have to wait until after Mercury retrograde to make any decisions. So does the same apply to Venus retrograde? Yes, to a degree, particularly around relationships. So I've seen with Venus retrograde, there's often like a bit of a false start with new relationships, or there's a difficult start, or it's hard to start. It's like trying to like start the car over and over again, and it's just the engine's not going. You know, people might embark on a relationship and want to kind of create some sort of commitment right away, but that can be very difficult when Venus is retrograde because we're still reviewing our values. We're still kind of in the space of reflection about relationships. So generally speaking, I try and advise people, don't try and put a label on anything yet. If you meet somebody and it feels really special, that's wonderful. It doesn't mean that the relationship can't work out, but right now, until at least the 4th of September, and I would probably give it until the middle of September, for Venus to come out of her post-retrograde, what's called a shadow, you know, wait a while before you put any pressure on it. The same goes for separations or breakups. I've seen, because relationships fall under Venus, there can be more than usual breakups during a Venus retrograde. Very commonly, however, they don't always last, the breakups or the separations, unless the relationship really has run its course. So that is something that I kind of warn my clients as well, is like, you know, if you want to break up and it's really time, then go by all means and go ahead and do it. But do expect obstacles or problems as that happens, because there will be usually some sort of issue that comes up around that, or you get back together after the Venus retrograde. Very commonly, I've seen exes come back. Cindy, you've got a question?
Yeah, I do. You know what's been coming up for me the last few weeks? It's old bad relationships. People sort of messaging me and popping, and I'm going like getting a little bit tempted to connect, and then going, ouch, they were not very nice. Why are these
not
people
great?
Yeah, old people like showing up and going, hell no, or being encouraged to connect and then going,
yes.
Is that normal at this time?
Actually, that was the very next thing that I was going to say. So I'm super glad that you brought that up. Thank you. So exes tend to pop out of the woodwork. Ex-friends, ex-business partners, ex-lovers, ex-husbands, ex-wives. They are all over the show during Venus retrograde. And I also get that question like, oh, should I go back to them? Generally speaking, no. Okay, so it's like usually a no. But why are they coming up? So there is a reason behind it. And the cosmic reason for it is that there is something that needs to be learned and integrated still from that ending of that relationship. So there's some closure that needs to be gained so that you can embark on the next relationship or the next chapter on a clean slate. So there is a purpose for it. It's meant for you to shut certain doors. Sometimes I have seen certain relationships, old relationships, come back during a Venus retrograde, that people do get back together and maybe it works for a while, but it takes a lot of work. Now the same goes for finances. We might have delays in financial commitments. There might be, especially because the fact that Venus is retrograde in Leo. So Leo is quite an extravagant sign. It's quite lush and quite luxurious. And Venus in Leo is always a bit over the top when it comes to money and when it comes to nice things. He likes the parties, likes the high life, likes the good stuff. And when Venus is retrograde in Leo, especially because Venus will be connecting to Jupiter a few times via what's known as a square aspect throughout the course of her retrograde. So when Venus and Jupiter connect in a hard aspect, it can indicate excess and wastage, overindulgence, overspending. Our waistlines grow and our bank accounts shrink. We can kind of take the whole self-care thing to a bit of a different level where we're like, moe on me, everyone. So that's very important. We do have to kind of watch the pennies a little bit while Venus is retrograde in Leo. Try not to go over the top financially, make any big major financial commitments, unless you really have a good financial advisor on your side and you've got your ducks in a row. But do try and hold back, because there can be a bit of wasting of money that happens during Venus retrograde in Leo. We can have very grand plans, but they don't always materialize. Venus will also be connecting to Uranus a few times during this retrograde. So this is also the planet of unexpected events, so unpredictable things. So we might have like really unpredictable things developing in our finances, our relationships as well. So we need to be kind of adaptable during this time. And then Venus retrograde in Leo can also be a bit of a diva. So we do have to be careful of being overly dramatic, because remember, when a planet goes retrograde in a sign, it can bring out some of the dark, or let's say the shadow characteristics of that sign that we all have to face, right? We all have shadow. It's normal. We all have a particular sign that has its own shadow. And the shadow of Leo can be the drama, the show. Sometimes it can be excessive self-absorption. Sometimes it can be excessive pride. And often what it is excessive strength. And I know that sounds very strange, but Leo, the sign of Leo's greatest weakness is its strength and self-sufficiency, where they don't ask for help and they don't, reach out, and they'll do everything alone. So all of those qualities can tend to get a bit magnified when Venus is retrograde in Leo. So those are all of the kinds of things we got to watch out for. Like I said, officially till September 4th, but I think it will take a little while, at least another 2 weeks or so, for Venus to kind of find her feet. Anybody here, maybe my old students, can you tell me which signs are ruled by Venus, which are going to be most affected by this retrograde? Taurus, correct, and Libra, perfect. So those of you who have your sun, your moon, or your rising sign in Taurus or Libra, you guys are going to be the most affected by this Venus retrograde. You're going to feel it the most. And of course, anyone out here who's a Leo. So I don't know if anybody wants to type in the chat box, are you a Taurus or a Leo, a Libra? Cindy, I think you're a Leo. So you've got to really deal with this retrograde, and take the cosmic advice into your heart. Okay, so there's quite a few Libras and Taurus. Okay, so Virgo, you're fine. You're going to do okay. Aquarius, you're also fine. But yeah, those of you who've got Taurus and Libra, how are you guys doing? You all okay out there? Anyone want to share anything that's happened? Ha ha ha. Okay, is that like a crazy laugh? Like, okay. Wild. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Your natal Venus is in Leo.
Sinead keeps on talking about childhood things keep coming up, which is really
Thank you
interesting.
for saying that. It's very true. Yeah. So Leo actually rules. It rules children, and it rules the heart, and it rules creativity and self-expression. So, yeah, you certainly can feel childhood stuff, family stuff as well, because Leo rules the family. So I have seen some people deal with like difficult family dynamics, drama. Yeah, Pisces. Yeah, you guys, boundaries, boundaries. Don't take it on. Okay, nice growth. It's nice to see that, Caitlin. Past review. So that's a really constructive way to use your Venus retrograde. It's just to sit and review the past. So Claudia, when did Venus go into retrograde? I think it was July. I think it was July 23rd, from what I remember, because it's a 40-day and 40-night experience. The one thing I do want to say is that on the 13th of August, so currently Venus is the evening star, so she's behind the sun, and she becomes the morning star on the 13th of August, which is a bit of a turning point, because the symbology behind it, mythology behind it, is that Venus, during her retrograde phase, when she's behind the sun, goes down into the underworld as Inanna, and she goes through. She has to strip layers of her clothing at each sort of gate, and she gets initiated deeper and deeper into the shadow, and until she's completely naked and completely vulnerable. And from there she transforms, and she starts rising up and coming out of this underworld and becomes the morning star rising before the sun. So this happens on August 13th. So I think from that point things are going to start becoming a little bit more illuminated, a little bit more easier, even though she only goes direct on the 4th. I do think from the 13th, in a couple of days, things may start revealing themselves, and we might start coming out of this underworld or this reflection process. Now, August isn't quite done with us yet, because on the 23rd of August, Mercury joins the retrograde party. And I mean, anyone here not heard of Mercury retrograde? It's a pretty common one. Anyone here like, what is that?
I think we all know it.
I think so too. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. I'm shame. I
No.
shy, which is also cool. So
it's when life is really crap and we need to blame something. So it's
So Mercury's retrograde is not my fault. Yeah. So we have a bit of a Mercury. Yeah, we have a Mercury moment. August 23rd to September the 4th. So Mercury and Venus will be retrograde at the same time, which is a little bit wobbly. So things aren't really going to move much in August, guys. Don't try and push things too hard. Or if you do, if there are decisions that need to be made, particularly material ones, because Mercury this year is going retrograde in all the earth signs, Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn, which means that earth-related things, money, property, security, material resources, are going to be most affected by these Mercury retrogrades. So if there are financial decisions that you need to make, or material decisions, go ahead and make them. I mean, you've got to live your life, but just be sure that you are crossing your T's and dotting your I's, because as we know with Mercury retrograde, things do tend to get a bit confused and misconstrued and delayed and problematic, etc., etc. You know, your signing of your leases, bank loans and financial stuff, all of that, just check and double check and make sure you've got some good people on your side, and rest, review, reflect. It's going to be happening in the sign of Virgo, so it's going to be hard to keep on top of details, routines, plans, meetings. They're going to kind of go upside down. So just check and double check and just be adaptable as possible. we might be a little bit more argumentative during that time. We might be a bit more over-analyzing, overly critical. So we just need to kind of, again, check ourselves. I always like to use the phrase, check yourself before you wreck yourself, particularly during Mercury retrograde. Luckily, Mercury and Jupiter will be connecting in a really nice way. Jupiter is a very expansive planet, very lucky planet. He's also in an earth sign. So, you know, throughout this Mercury retrograde, even if we'll have its difficulties, I do think we're going to have some really good ideas during this time, especially business ideas and financial ideas. And it may be a good idea to jot them all down or to have a meeting with somebody, maybe not put anything into like practice just yet, but, you know, at least have a plan for when Mercury goes direct on the 14th of September. Anyone know the 2 signs that Mercury rules that are going to be most affected by Mercury retrograde? Gemini, Gemini, and Virgo. Okay, so your Geminis and Virgos, you're the ones that are always most affected by Mercury retrograde, Sun, Moon, rising. So when did Venus, okay, we answered that one. Maybe rent houses when Venus is retrograde. Yes, you can. You can do whatever you like. But you know, be prepared for relational issues. Maybe you have like a little bit of a disagreement with the landlord or your neighbors or your partner or your kids, you know, so there is a bit of a relational thing that goes on during Venus retrograde. But yes, you can absolutely, you can keep living your life. You just need to be a little bit more conscious of what comes up and a little bit more aware of how you're responding to those things. So
Margarita,
things are a bit slow. Yeah.
I have a question. So what's been quite interesting is I've got quite a lot going on at the moment, but just naturally, without knowing this information, I've been saying to people, we can chat, but really I want to get into manifestation in September. So let's pause till then. And so intuitively, I guess we work with that without having the theory behind it.
So I think the more work that we do on ourselves in a conscious way, the more spiritual work we do on ourselves, the more therapeutic work we do on ourselves. I have seen in myself and my peers, my clients, that we do naturally tune into the energy of the cosmos. And in fact, astrology is a really nice validation tool a lot of the time. I've often found that my clients come to me, especially those who are a little bit more, let's say, work, and they already know the stuff that I'm telling them. They just needed to, we all need to hear it, that we kind of headed in the right direction. It's just nice to know sometimes. Yeah.
Some great questions in the chat as well for you.
So is the Venus retrograde got to do with self-discovery? Absolutely. So Venus is in Leo, and Leo is the sign of the self and of the personal identity. So absolutely, it can definitely bring up questions around oneself, self-love, self-confidence, belief in self, all of those kinds of things. I would certainly advise that you do something creative art processing, dancing, things like that can just really unlock that process for you. And Almeen says, does the recent activity of the sun have any relevance to astrology, or is it primarily an astronomical event? So I'm not really sure what the sun has been doing recently. Do you mean like solar flares? Yes, okay. So no, so we don't really link. There's astronomy and astrology are two separate. So astrology is more of a symbolic language, where astronomy is more of a like a literal thing that happens in the universe. But yeah, I know that a lot of people are pretty exhausted at the moment. I think that's also got a lot to do with the retrograde and the Lion's Gate. So yeah, it's important to rest. So from September, Venus and Mercury go direct, and I think we're really going to start, things are going to really start picking up from about the middle of September. It's a pretty peaceful month, to be honest. We're not going to go on and on about September. We've got a full moon in Aries, and we've got a new moon in Virgo. The full moon in Aries is going to be an interesting one because it culminates there were 2 new moons in Aries this year. One at the beginning of March and one at the end of March. One of them was even an eclipse. So it's going to bring about culminations of whatever we kicked off around March of this year, especially things that we did that were very independently focused, things that we wanted to do for ourselves, any adventurous things, things that we wanted to kick off, pioneer. So I do think it's going to be quite a nice full moon. And then the new moon in Virgo on the 14th, at the same time that Mercury goes direct, is also quite a nice one in Virgo. You know, it's a great time for detoxing. It's a great time for cleansing. It's a great time for meetings. It's a very productive couple of months. It also does seem to be a new moon that's going to have some really exciting, maybe new work projects or new financial projects. There's a lot of growth involved. We do need to be quite clear about what it is that we want, because there can be some outside influences that will maybe confuse us. So we do need to get a bit clear with that one. But generally speaking, September, middle of the month, things are really moving forward. Then we march into October, which is eclipse season. Anyone know what happens during eclipse season? Or what eclipses symbolize? Eclipses. A bit shy. Okay. So eclipse season happens every year, more or less the same time. March, April. Regeneration is a good word. March, April, and October, November. So it's kind of like clockwork. They're just in different signs. So firstly, what are eclipses? Well, eclipses are obviously when the moon and the sun, the paths cross, and then the light gets kind of blocked out. And that has a very symbolic significance, because light represents consciousness and dark represents unconsciousness. And so when eclipse seasons happen, it's often when these karmic doorways really get opened and a lot of stuff can come through, and they're very heightened energy. A lot of people are usually a bit tired during eclipse season. They need to rest a little bit more. A lot of very big accelerated events tend to happen according to the signs that they're in. We move house, we get divorced, we get married, we have a baby, we start a new job, we change countries, you know. So those are the kinds of things that usually happen during eclipse seasons. Now, this particular eclipse season, we have a shift, a very big shift of the moon's nodes from one pair of signs to the next pair of signs. What does this mean? Well, the moon's nodes are essentially in astrology what denotes an eclipse. And they are the pair of signs that they're in tend to illustrate the types of lessons that we're learning during this eclipse season. So the next couple of eclipses are going to have a very similar theme. And that's going to be the themes of Libra and Aries, because that's the two signs that the nodes have moved into since about July last month. So can anybody come up with one word or two words for what Aries and Libra might represent, the axis of Aries and Libra? Anyone know? I and other. Really nice, Caitlin. Exactly. Fire and earth. So it's fire and air, close. But I and other is a very good community individual. That's also a nice way to put it. We could also say relationships versus individual. So one word that I like to use a lot with Aries and Libra is relationships. Okay, so this eclipse season in October, again, and it's kind of like maybe a bit of a year for it, is relationships. Me, which is Aries, my path, what I want to do, my sense of identity, my independence, versus Libra, which is all about you, pleasing you, partnerships, compromise, negotiation. So it's also the very classical sort of masculine, feminine energies. Yes, Sinead, it's a very big deal if your natal nodes are Libra and Aries. That means that you're going through something called a nodal return or a half nodal return, which is a very big personal turning point in your life. Again, depending on where those nodes are in your chart, that's a whole nother story. You either want to do a course or see an astrologer. But yeah, that is a very big turning point. So the idea of these eclipses is to balance the masculine and feminine, to balance the you and the me, and not to have it, you know, kind of totally tipping the scales, where because the North Node, which is this expansive energies in Aries, there's going to be a lot. There might be on the dark side this rampant kind of narcissism, which I think we've seen a lot of in recent years, and maybe emphasized during this time with you know, that sort of us and togetherness and teamwork and negotiation and compromise, all those values kind of getting drained or falling to the wayside. So we need to be very mindful of bringing these two into balance. We can't have hyper independence, but of course we can't have codependence either. So interdependence is a word that I would like to use or to suggest with these eclipse seasons, or with the Aries and Libra themes, and balancing the masculine and feminine within ourselves as well. And we might also see that, again, relationships really come under the spotlight during these times, during these eclipse seasons. We're also entering during October the Scorpio season. So not only Libra season, but Scorpio season. I don't know. I always feel like Scorpio season is crazy time. It's a very intense time, you know, it's very transformative. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's the witching season. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's Halloween or Samhain. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's Beltane, or one of the fertility festivals. So, you know, it has similar themes to that Libra Aries and to that Scorpio. I often see it as the shadow season. When we enter the Scorpio realms, we face our shadows and our darkness, and we transform. So we have our first solar eclipse on the 14th of October. I think it's got a lot to do with our sense of worth, letting go of any sense of unworthiness, new beginnings, kind of because it is in Libra. So we may find that there are some new beginnings when it comes to relationships, when it comes to compromise, when it comes to fairness, when it comes to balance. There's a bit of a draining energy there as well, so we need to be aware of that. Partnerships might begin. There might be this process of healing wounds that come up during that particular solar eclipse. I generally prefer solar eclipses to lunar, because they tend to be a brighter, sort of more beginnings orientated energy, whereas lunar eclipses can be very intense. They are full moons, so they're endings and letting go and culminations. And that our lunar eclipse is in Taurus on the 28th of October. There's a lot of growth available, especially growth through endings and through letting go. A lot of things around communication, a lot of truths that I think will come out during that time, which might be a bit cutting. We need to be careful of going over the top with our actions during that time. And around that time as well, you know, Venus will finally start shifting into a new sign after a really long time in Leo. She'll move into Virgo, and she'll go away from the retrograde drama of Leo and become, you know, a little bit more humble. And also her love language, or our love language, for the next month after that will be really around acts of service, and doing things for others in a practical kind of way. And there'll be a little bit more, I think, pulling back on extravagance as well. Okay.
When is that?
That's all happening. So that's all happening so Venus will be moving into Virgo, I think also around the end of October. So that will be a time when we start pulling back and becoming a little bit less, I don't know, I suppose the word is flashy or grandiose or indulgent. So we go into a bit more of a humility sort of space. And then we move into November, which, again, you know, after the chaos of October, I don't think November is going to be as chaotic. Our new moon will be in Scorpio, so again there's still a bit of themes around transformation and evolution, but it's not an eclipse, so it's not as intense. There's an opportunity to step into our power from about the 13th of November, or to start sowing the seeds for that, taking control of things that we may have felt that we were out of control with. One thing I have marked down for November is that Saturn, which is the planet of structure and responsibility, is going direct after about 6 months of retrograde. Does anybody here know where Saturn is currently at the moment in the skies? Which sign he's in? Pisces. Yeah. Okay, so Saturn moved into Pisces from about March of this year. So from March 2020, very important date, till March 2023, Saturn was in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of freedom. Saturn is a planet of limitations. Pretty much, go figure. So from about March this year, Saturn moved into a whole new sign of Pisces. So here we are learning about responsibility and limitations around Pisces themes. What I've seen quite a lot of is people, I would say first, immersing themselves in escapism, because that's what Pisces is all about. Because when Saturn moves into any new sign, the first year of his time there, he tends to kind of get a little bit, he tests the qualities of that sign. Then the second year, he starts learning, okay, like something needs to be done here. And then by the third year, he started to integrate. That's how long he spends in any sign. So for me, what I've seen a lot of this year, especially while Saturn has been retrograde, a lot of escapism, a lot of needing to face up to our emotions, to our vulnerability, a lot of lessons around vulnerability, a lot of lessons around escapism, a lot of lessons around learning to take on responsibility and not run away from it, because Pisces kind of in their shadow really doesn't like being overwhelmed with things to do and pressure and responsibilities, but we're really being tested here. So once Saturn moves direct out of retrograde motion, you know, we can start making a bit of progress in these areas. So, you know, those of us who have Pisces very strong in our chart, so sun, moon, or rising, you're going to be feeling this the most, the Saturn transits over this, you know, these next 3 years. You are being asked to step up in really big ways, to mature, to grow up, so to speak. You are facing certain limitations and learning that we can't just avoid and swim away from things. And I say we because I've got lots of Pisces in my chart, so I know what it's like. There is that call to step up and take responsibility for our emotions, for our actions. So for those of us with Pisces very strong in our chart, this is a very important month. If you have Virgo strong in the chart as well, which is your sun, moon, or rising, you are also going to be tested or are being tested by Saturn. You may have external challenges coming your way, material challenges. You know, we're looking at like work, money, and those kinds of things. Also asking you to look, how do I need to restructure my life? How do I need to restructure my health, my lifestyle? All those kinds of things. It is also to some degree affecting those with Sagittarius or Gemini, big three. When I say big three, I mean sun, moon, and rising. I don't know if anyone here wants to share or comment on the experiences with Saturn. Any Pisceans out there, Virgos, Geminis, Sag? Have you been feeling some heavy hard work Saturn energy coming into your life recently? Anyone being challenged yet? I mean, it might still be coming for you in the next year or two. You might not be feeling it quite yet, but for those of us, you know, quite a few of us are already feeling that. So Caitlin, you're in your Saturn return. Cool. Rising Pisces, change, new job, lots of new friendships. That's nice. Yeah. Look, some of you might not be familiar with what a return means or rising. So just take in whatever you can, let it soak in, absorb what feels relevant. I will be holding a course at some point from the 5th of September. So if anybody is more curious to learn about this, we'll learn about things like the Saturn return and what a rising sign means. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, guys. But the good thing about Saturn is that it's, you know, the foundations that we work on when Saturn is making us work lasts. So we have to put some blood, sweat, and tears in, but it's very much worth it. It's like building a house. It's not easy building a house. The vision is always very exciting, but the actual getting down to building those foundations and putting up those walls and putting those windows and dealing with builders is usually pretty hardcore. But then you've got a house and it's set up forever. So try and think about it that way. It is very much adulting. And Pisceans don't really like adulting very much. So no, Sinead, what's happening in November is Saturn is moving out of retrograde. He's been retrograde for about 6 months or so. He's going to be staying in Pisces. Don't know if this is good or bad news to you, but he's going to be staying in Pisces until March 2026. And then he won't be coming back for about 30 years. So each of us get a round of Saturn. Each sign gets their 3 years of Saturn. So as he moves out of retrograde, it's almost like any delays that we've been experiencing, any frustrations that we've been experiencing, any blockages to the lessons we've wanted to learn, any restrictions we've been experiencing can start kind of falling away and things can start moving forward again, particularly when it comes to, the responsibilities that we've decided to take on in whichever area of life. Okay, so things start moving a little bit, basically. So those of you who are in your Saturn return, if you know what Saturn return is, a major milestone, turning point, you are the ones born between 93 and 96. Very important initiation for you. Definitely go ahead and Google the Saturn return. Enjoy the rabbit hole. It's deep and dark and wonderful and very informative. And the last thing I'll say is that if we do have any addictions and any attachments, from when Saturn goes direct from November onwards, we can start actively really dealing with those things in a constructive and productive way. I would also certainly encourage those who are interested in music or art or creativity to get really structured about that and really commit to that as well. And their spirituality, because Pisces rules spirituality. So that will be November. On the 22nd of November, we have a lovely Sagittarius full moon. So that should feel pretty light and happy. That's kicking off our holiday season. A couple of restrictions there as well. But generally speaking, that starts bringing up the light Sagittarius fun, play, party kind of vibe. And then there's a new moon also around in November, around the end of November. Beginning of December. So that can kind of bring, if any of us want to have travel plans, study plans, I would say beginning of December would be a good time to start thinking about those and looking into them, particularly if we want to kick those off for the next 6 months. So there's planning you want to do, if you want to join a workshop, if you want to join a course, if you want to teach, if you want to travel a bit, take a few trips, that would be a good one for us to look at. And how do we end off the year in December? Well, we have a lovely new moon on the 12th in Saggy. So there is a bit of Sag Gemini energy that's quite ongoing through November and December. So again, lots of fun from about the middle of December. I would say if you can book yourself some time off and have a bit of a holiday or just have some fun, I would say from the 12th of December onwards is a really good time to do that. Try not to overdo it. There are some aspects around that time that could be going a little bit over the top because Sagittarius does tend to do that. But it is a good time to have some fun. Bear in mind that we'll have our last retrograde of Mercury for the year in December in Capricorn. And I think this is perfect timing. This happens from about December 13th. This is why I'm also like, maybe take a bit of a holiday if you can, because for the following 3 weeks, not much is going to get done work-wise, because Capricorn is our work sign. So what I would advise is take those 3 weeks to constructively work with the energies of Capricorn and maybe write down your goals, your medium, short, and long-term goals, brainstorm them, talk about them, review them, think about the year that's just gone past, and see what it is that you would like to kick off the first or second week of January. But if there are projects and things that you want to really do in December, that Mercury retrograde might slow you down and might have you rethinking your goals come the new year. So I think it's great timing. It's a great review, reflect, revise moments. Try not to do much if you can. So every year at the same time around Christmas, we have a full moon in Capricorn and in Cancer. And I think that's very fitting because Cancer is the family sign and the home sign and the most emotional sign. It's the inner child sign. It's the mother sign. And Christmas, if we celebrate that, can be a very emotional time for a lot of people. So be aware that on the 26th, we do have a full moon in Cancer. It is quite emotional. It is the culmination of the year. It is an important time to pay good attention to your inner child and see what it is that they need and check in with yourself. And we can get very caught up in the whole like family presence drama stuff. So I really kind of encourage that we get deeply in touch with our needs during that time. And, you know, when there is vulnerability, to allow that to be expressed and processed. For some people, especially after what a lot of us have gone through this year, maybe we've gone through a death or a loss or a breakup or an illness or a divorce or something like that, these times of year can be extremely testing for a lot of people. And so it's very important to have that deep connection to that inner child. On the very last day of the year, December 31st, Jupiter goes direct after being retrograde. So this is going to be a nice time to begin a growth process. It's good timing to step into the new year, into January, the sense of expansion, the sense of growth, and the sense of moving forward, because we may have had this, the 6 months prior, we may have had the sense that all the growth that we've been doing, we've had to integrate. And then from the end of the year, beginning of the new year, it's time to expand all over again. So very briefly, the signs that are having maybe the more challenging times this year would be what's known as your mutable signs. So those are your Pisces, which we've mentioned with Saturn's tests, the Virgos, who are also being affected by Saturn, and to a lesser degree, the Sagittarians and the Geminis. There are two planets that are essentially affecting you, which is Saturn, your limitations and tests planet, and then Neptune, which is like this planet that can be a bit confusing and nebulous. Luckily, Saturn is helping you have some discernment about what it is that you want and where you're going, but that Neptune energy can be a little bit foggy and confusing for you guys. So this can be a year in which you are being challenged to step up, that you are being challenged to figure out what it is that you want and to have boundaries. I'll say those are the main things that you mutable signs are facing. And that can be sun, moon, or rising. To a lesser degree, the fixed signs, Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus, not so much Taurus. It's the first three. A lot of these signs are being affected by the planet Uranus, which is bringing disruptive and sudden changes, unpredictable changes. And for fixed signs, that's always a bit tricky because fixed means consistent, fixed means stable, fixed means predictable. And we like things to be predictable and stable. So when Uranus comes along and disrupts everything, it can be very disconcerting. But this is the planet that sets us free. So there is this sense of liberation for those particular signs if we allow ourselves to be adaptable and see that there's potential for spreading our wings. I would say medium toughness, medium, whatever you want to call it for the year, is Aries and Libra, simply because you have the nodes and some of the eclipses going on for you guys. Taurus to a lesser degree, but I think you guys have been going on a path of change for quite a long time. So I think you're kind of used to it by this point. And Jupiter's in your sign, which is giving you opportunities to grow and expand. The year of ease for these signs, so Taurus, I've just mentioned you've got Jupiter helping you out, so you should be having a little bit of an easier time than most. Capricorns, I think you're kind of fine as well. You've had a couple of years of, really intense drama, crisis, transformations. So you should be having it kind of okay. Cancerians, you've also had quite a lot of drama and crisis lately. So I think for you, things are slightly easing up a little bit. Again, it really depends on exactly when you were born. So this is quite general. But I would say out of all the signs, you're kind of having a little bit of a better time there. Okay, so that actually brings me to the end of everything that I've wanted to say. And that is where the rest of 2023 is going. We've got some high points, we've got some low points. I think currently the Venus retrograde is probably the biggest challenge that we're facing. But we don't seem to have any major other things going on until 2024 will have some of its own energies, which maybe we'll do talk on then. Hey, Cindy?
I think so, for sure. Yeah. I've just had something really lovely, if there are any questions and anyone would like to think, coming through as a Lionsgate offering. And I'm just wondering whether everyone would just like to ground and center in their hearts and just listen to this beautiful offering. As I said, just popped up in my WhatsApp. I check it in case participants are messaging me, and I'd really like to just read it. I think it's quite appropriate for tonight.
Yes,
So
please.
everyone just
Yes.
ground and center in your heart and just really focus on these beautiful words. It's a Lion Gate offering. Call back your spirit energy so it radiates strong within you. Call back your spirit energy into your eyes so they sparkle only in the way that your eyes can. Call back your spirit into your heart so it may feel just how loved it is. Call back your spirit energy into your belly so it may move in the rhythm with your brain. And call back your spirit energy into your feet so you may walk with purpose. And that was published by foreverconsciousness.com.
Yeah. I love
Which
Forever Conscious. Thank you, Cindy. Sure.
Yeah, I just think that is really beautiful, just to honor that 8/8 tonight. And then moving on, I just want you to talk a little bit. You've got a lovely workshop running that you've run at the school quite often and has always been so well attended. So for those who haven't, it's you running the Moon and Inner Child workshop on Saturday, the 19th of August, 10 o'clock South African Standard Time and 9 o'clock GMT. Do you want to just give us a little snippet of what that is, Marguerite?
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, definitely. So basically that workshop is open to anybody with or without astrological experience. So I will be delivering it in a way that's really easy to understand. So a lot of us are really familiar with our star sign or our sun sign, like I'm an Aries or I'm a Virgo, whatever it is, and how that defines you and how that kind of colors your personality. But what a lot of people aren't aware of is that, like I said, we've got 10 planets in the chart, and one of the most important planets is our moon. Our moon rules our inner child. It rules our emotional style, what we need to emotionally feel safe and secure, how we express ourselves emotionally. And it's a complete game changer knowing your moon sign, because you're able then to communicate, because most people don't even know what they need, and less how to communicate what they need. And think about how much that it can improve our lives and improve our partnerships and improve everything in our lives. So I'm going to be doing like a 2-hour workshop where I'm going to be taking the participants through each and every moon sign and elements. You will be getting your own personal astrology chart as well, emailed to you. So that will be a gift of the course. And you'll be able to walk away with, like, firstly, a pretty good tiny little foundational knowledge of what astrology actually is, and then personal information about your moon sign and your moon elements and how that translates to how you express your needs, what it is that you need, what governs you emotionally, etc., etc. So yeah.
Excellent. And then we have your fantastic astrology of self-empowerment starting in September. And this is now accredited with the International Practitioners of Holistic Medicine. And do you want to just talk about this? Because this is about somebody doing a real deep dive into their own charts and exploring.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Cindy. So yeah, it's accredited, which is great. So what does accredited mean? It means that you get a certificate at the end of the course that is recognized. It also means that you get homework and that I mark that homework. So I see your progress as well, which is really useful. And it's a 12-week journey into yourself. It's a 12-week journey of self-empowerment. It's a 12-week journey to understand your own chart and what makes you tick. So it's a very, very strong personal development experience. And it's also an introduction and a foundation to the world of astrology. So you'll be able to understand what they mean when they say horoscopes, and you read something and this is square that, and that is in that sign, and this is retrograde. So you'll be able to get all that terminology as well. So again, you'll be working with your own chart very extensively, really diving deep into all the tools of astrology and coming out with, we're going to be doing things like karmic astrology and life cycle astrology, and we're going to be going into every single planet. So it really is a really in-depth course. And yeah, I think my students always have a lot of fun during it. They get a few gray hairs, but it's okay. Once a few more gray hairs.
And I have to say, Marguerite often, I mean, not always, gets the most wonderful feedback from her courses. So, Marguerite, first of all, I want to thank you for tonight, letting us know the rest of the year doesn't feel so difficult once August is over. I'm very pleased to say that most of my big plans only start around the 9th of September. So I'm feeling quite chuffed about that. Yeah, which is good news. So I'm feeling good about that. But also because actually you are in Sri Lanka and it's now 11:30. So it's really time to say goodnight and a big thank you from all of us. It was wonderful having you. We love having you online. And it's just so nice to see you there in Sri Lanka. And we know you're coming home soon, but we're back to South Africa. So that's brilliant. So thank you for your wisdom, your guidance, your knowledge, as always. And each and every one of you, thank you for being there, engaging with us, playing full out. That always helps the speaker and myself as host. So a big round of applause and a big pat on the back for all of us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Cindy. Thanks, everyone.
And good luck for the rest.
Comments.
Good luck for the rest of August.
We got this.
Take care.
We got this. Bye, guys.
Bye.